The phone rang while I was pouring my second cup of coffee. It was Derek, my son, calling the day after my birthday. His voice sounded casual at first, asking how my day had been. Then he asked the question that would change everything. "So, how were the cookies?" I smiled, stirring cream into my mug. "Oh, those were so thoughtful, honey. But you know your mother-in-law Patricia just loves sweets, and she's been so kind helping me with my garden. I gave them to her yesterday afternoon." Silence. Complete, terrible silence. Then Derek's voice exploded through the phone. "You did what?" My hand froze halfway to my mouth, the coffee mug suspended in air. The panic in Derek's voice made my chest tighten. "Mom, where exactly are those cookies right now? Are they still at Patricia's house?" Yes, I suppose so. Derek, what's wrong? You're scaring me." His breath came fast through the phone, and I heard what sounded like car keys jangling. "Mom, those cookies weren't from me. Bridget sent those. I need you to listen very carefully. We have to call Patricia right now." The kitchen suddenly felt too bright, too normal for the dread creeping up my spine. I set down the mug with shaking hands. "What do you mean Bridget sent them? The card said they were from you." I know. "Mom, I've been watching Bridget's behavior for the past 2 weeks. I found some disturbing searches on her laptop. Poison information, plant toxicity, and then I saw charges on our Amazon account. Bulk orders of oleander extract and other substances I'd never heard of." My mouth went dry. "Oleander? Derek, that's..." "I know what it is, Mom. It's deadly. When I confronted Bridget this morning about sending something to you, she got defensive. Said she'd made you special birthday cookies herself, sent them as a surprise. But Mom, Bridget, has never baked anything in the 8 years we've been married. She hates baking." When she said special cookies, something in her voice made my blood run cold. "I called you immediately to tell you not to eat them, that I was going to have them tested." The room started spinning. Patricia, sweet Patricia, who'd spent 3 afternoons last week helping me transplant my hydrangeas. Patricia, who'd eaten those cookies. Oh my God. "Derek, I need to hang up. I need to get to Patricia's house right now." "I'm already in the car, Mom. I'm 20 minutes away. Call 911 and get there as fast as you can. Don't wait for me." I grabbed my purse and keys, my hands trembling so badly I could barely grip them. I tried calling Patricia's number as I rushed to my car. It rang and rang, going to voicemail. I tried again. Nothing. The drive to Patricia's house normally took 15 minutes. I made it in 10, running 2 yellow lights and barely registering the angry honks from other drivers. Her modest blue house sat quiet in the late morning sun, her silver sedan parked in the driveway. That meant she was home. Why wasn't she answering? I parked crooked at the curb and ran to her front door. Locked. I pounded on it, calling her name. Nothing. I tried the handle again, then remembered she kept a spare key under the ceramic frog by her garden hose. My fingers fumbled with the slippery key, finally getting it into the lock. "Patricia! Patricia! It's Clarissa." The living room was dim, curtains still drawn. And then I saw her. She was collapsed on the floor beside her coffee table, her body curled on its side. The decorative cookie box I'd given her yesterday lay open beside her, only crumbs remaining. A pool of vomit stained her beige carpet, and her skin had a grayish tint that made her look like a wax figure. Oh God, Patricia." I dropped to my knees beside her, pressing my fingers to her neck. Her pulse was there, but weak and irregular. Her breathing came in shallow, rattling gasps. Her lips had a bluish tinge around the edges. I fumbled for my phone and dialed 911 with shaking fingers. 911, what's your emergency?" "My friend, she's been poisoned. She's barely breathing. Her lips are blue. Please, send someone right away." The operator's calm voice guided me through checking Patricia's airway, positioning her on her side, monitoring her breathing. The minutes stretched like hours until I finally heard sirens approaching. Paramedics burst through the door I'd left open, their movements swift and professional. They loaded Patricia onto a stretcher, starting an IV line, checking her vital signs with urgent efficiency. What did she ingest? One of them asked me. Cookies, they were. They had oleander in them, oleander extract. The paramedic's eyes widened slightly, and he relayed this information to his partner. They moved even faster after that. Are you family? No, I'm a friend. Her daughter is my daughter-in-law. Her son-in-law is on his way. We're taking her to Memorial Hospital. You can follow us there. I watched them wheel Patricia out to the ambulance, its lights painting the quiet neighborhood in rotating red. Neighbors had started emerging from their houses, watching with concerned faces. I climbed back into my car, my whole body shaking, and followed the ambulance through town. This was my fault. I'd given her those cookies. If Patricia died, it would be because of me. The hospital emergency entrance was a blur of automatic doors and bright fluorescent lights. I gave Patricia's information to the registration desk, then sank into a hard plastic chair in the waiting area. My phone buzzed. Derek. Mom, where are you? Memorial Hospital. The ambulance just brought her in. Derek, she was unconscious. There was vomit everywhere. The whole box of cookies was empty. I'm 5 minutes away. Stay there. Those 5 minutes felt like 5 hours. I stared at the television mounted in the corner, some morning talk show playing to an audience of worried people who probably had their own nightmares unfolding behind those emergency room doors. Then Derek burst through the entrance, and my heart sank. Bridget was with him. Derek looked terrified, his face pale and drawn. But Bridget's expression was different. Her eyes were red and puffy, and the moment she saw me, she let out a wailing sob. You gave those cookies to my mother? You knew they were for you. Why would you give away your own birthday gift? I stood up, confused by her attack. Bridget, I didn't know there was anything wrong with them. I just thought, what did you do to them? Her voice rose to a shriek, and several people in the waiting room turned to stare. Those were supposed to be for you. I made them special for you. Why would you give them to my mother? What did you do to them before you gave them away? The accusation hit me like a physical blow. I actually stepped backward. What? I didn't do anything to them. I gave them to Patricia because she loves sweets and I thought it would be nice. You're lying. Bridget's tears flowed freely now, and she turned to Derek, gripping his arm. Derek, your mother has always hated my family. She's always been jealous of how close I am to my mom. She did something to those cookies. She must have. Why else would she give away her own birthday present? Bridget, that's not. Derek started, but he looked confused, torn. A nurse approached us. Are you here for Patricia Dawson? Yes. Bridget pushed past me. That's my mother. How is she? She's stable but critical. The doctor will come speak with you shortly. Are you immediate family? I'm her daughter. The nurse looked at me. And you are? Before I could answer, Bridget cut in. She's the one who gave my mother the poisoned cookies. The nurse's expression changed, becoming more guarded. I see. The police have been notified. They'll want to speak with everyone involved. My legs almost gave out. The police. Of course they'd been notified. This was a poisoning. But I wasn't the one who'd poisoned anyone. Was I? The police arrived 30 minutes later. 2 officers, one older with gray at his temples, one younger with sharp eyes that seemed to miss nothing. They separated us, taking statements in different corners of the waiting room. I told them everything. The cookies arriving on my birthday, with a card saying they were from Derek, how I'd given them to Patricia because she loved sweets and had been so helpful with my garden. Derek's panicked phone call. Finding Patricia collapsed in her living room. And you didn't eat any of these cookies yourself? The older officer asked. No. I gave the whole box to Patricia yesterday afternoon. Why would you do that? If they were a birthday gift to you? I tried to explain. Patricia and I have become friends over the past few months. She's been coming over to help me with my garden. I'm not much of a sweets person myself, and I knew she'd enjoy them more than I would. It seemed like a kind gesture. The officer made notes. Then the younger one leaned forward. Mrs. Brennan, what's your relationship like with your daughter-in-law? It's It's fine. Normal. Why? She seems to think you have some hostility toward her mother. That's absurd. Patricia and I are friends. Real friends. But even as I said it, doubt crept in. The officers exchanged a look that made my stomach turn. After an hour, they let me go but told me not to leave town. I found Derek in the hallway outside the ICU. He looked exhausted. Mom, they're saying Patricia has oleander toxicity. It's damaged her kidneys. They're not sure if she'll fully recover. Tears sprang to my eyes. Derek, I swear I didn't know. I would never. I know, Mom. I know. But his voice held a note of uncertainty that cut deeper than Bridget's accusations. Over the next 2 days, while Patricia lay in the ICU fighting for her life, Bridget launched a campaign against me that I never saw coming. She posted on social media, vaguely at first. When family members hide their true nature behind sweet smiles and kind gestures, praying for my mother's recovery from this senseless act, people who knew our families started putting pieces together. The comment section filled with shock and speculation. Then Bridget went to the police with evidence I'd never seen before. Text messages, supposedly from me, making cruel comments about Patricia's weight, her financial struggles, her parenting of Bridget. I stared at the screenshots the police showed me, my mouth hanging open. I never sent these. I don't even text like this. Look at the language, the spelling. This isn't me. But the messages came from my phone number. Somehow, impossibly, they'd come from my phone. Bridget also produced screenshots of a family chat group where I'd supposedly criticized Patricia repeatedly, mocked her clothes, made fun of her voice, said terrible things about how she'd raised Bridget. I've never even seen this chat group, I told the detective assigned to my case. I don't know how these exist. Detective Morrison looked at me with tired eyes. Mrs. Brennan, technology makes it easy to deny things, but we have to follow the evidence. The evidence kept mounting. Bridget had kept the recipe for the cookies, she claimed, along with receipts for all the innocent ingredients. Sugar, flour, butter, chocolate chips. Nothing suspicious. She showed police her handwritten recipe card, covered in flour smudges, looking well used. I baked them with love, she sobbed to the local news reporter who'd somehow gotten wind of the story. I wanted to do something special for my mother-in-law's birthday because, despite everything, I was trying to build bridges, and now my mother is dying because of it. Derek stood beside her in that news clip, his arm around her shoulders, looking devastated. He didn't defend me. He didn't say anything at all. I watched it on my television at home, alone, feeling my world crumble. The police tested the cookie box for fingerprints. Mine were all over it, of course. I'd handled it when I gave it to Patricia. But they found no traces of Bridget's prints, which she explained away easily. I wore gloves while baking. I always do. It's more sanitary. When I mentioned Derek's warning phone call, the one where he'd told me about Bridget's suspicious Amazon purchases and laptop searches, Derek was called in for another interview. I wasn't there, but I heard about it later from my lawyer. Derek had told police he couldn't clearly remember the details of our phone conversation, that he'd been stressed and confused, that maybe he'd overreacted to seeing some household cleaning product orders and some recipe research. Bridget had gotten to him. She'd spent 2 days whispering in his ear, crying, manipulating, rewriting his memories. My son, who I'd raised to think critically and stand up for truth, was doubting his own mind. On the 3rd day after the poisoning, Patricia woke up. I learned this from the news, not from Derek. Bridget had made sure I wasn't welcome at the hospital. And then came the worst blow of all. Patricia, still groggy and disoriented from the medications, gave a statement to police. Bridget had been at her bedside constantly, the dutiful daughter, and what Patricia said destroyed any remaining hope I had. Clarissa gave me those cookies with a strange smile on her face. She said they were extra special, made just for me. She insisted I try them right away, said they were best fresh. There was something odd in her voice, looking back. Something eager. I'd said no such thing. I'd simply handed Patricia the box with a casual comment about enjoying them. But, Patricia, Confused and medicated and influenced by Bridget's constant presence, had been coached into remembering it differently. The victim herself was accusing me. Detective Morrison showed up at my house that evening. Mrs. Brennan, based on the evidence we've gathered, and Patricia Dawson's statement, the district attorney is preparing charges. I need to ask you to come down to the station tomorrow morning. Charges? What charges? Attempted murder and assault with a deadly substance. The words hit me like a freight train. I didn't do this. Please, you have to believe me. Bridget is lying. She's manipulating everyone. Ma'am, we have evidence. Physical evidence, witness testimony, motive. The DA feels confident moving forward. After he left, I sat in my living room in the dark, too stunned to even cry. How had this happened? How had a simple act of kindness turned into this nightmare? My phone buzzed. A text from Helen, my best friend of 30 years. Clarissa, I saw the news. I need some space to process all of this. I'm sorry. Even Helen didn't believe me. The next week felt like living in a horror movie where I was the monster everyone feared. I went to church on Sunday, something I'd done every week for the past 40 years. When I walked through the doors, conversations stopped. People turned to look at me, then quickly looked away. I took my usual seat in the third pew on the right, and the family who normally sat beside me got up and moved to the other side of the church. During the fellowship hour after service, I stood alone by the coffee table, while clusters of people whispered and shot glances my way. Margaret Henderson, who'd been in my Bible study group for 15 years, actually turned her back when I approached. I left before the pastor could corner me with his concerned, pitying expression. At the grocery store on Monday, I pushed my cart down the produce aisle and saw 3 women I knew from my book club. They saw me too. One of them grabbed the other's arms, and they hurried away, abandoning their half-full carts. On Tuesday morning, I woke to find poisoner spray-painted across my garage door in angry red letters. My hands shook as I called the police to report it. The officer who came to take the report was professional but cold. He took photos, asked if I had any enemies, and left without making eye contact. I spent 3 hours scrubbing at the paint with chemical remover, my shoulders aching, my eyes stinging with tears and fumes. The letters left ghost shadows on the white paint. Even after they were gone, I could still see them. Helen called that afternoon. For a moment my heart lifted. Then I heard her tone. Clarissa, I've been thinking about this for days. All the evidence points to you, and I keep remembering things, little comments you made about Bridget over the years. Maybe I didn't see the depth of your resentment. Helen, you know me. You know I couldn't do this. I thought I knew you. But people can hide darkness, can't they? I think it's best if we don't talk for a while. I need to process this. She hung up before I could respond. Wednesday brought a call from Barbara Chen at the library, where I'd worked part-time for 12 years shelving books and helping with the children's reading program. Clarissa, the board has asked me to call you. Given the circumstances and the ongoing investigation, we think it would be best if you took a temporary leave of absence until things are sorted out. You're firing me. Not firing, just a leave, until your name is cleared. And if my name isn't cleared, if I'm convicted of something I didn't do, silence on the other end. Then quietly. Let's hope it doesn't come to that. I'd counted on that job not for the money, though the $300 a week helped, but for the purpose. For the kids who'd light up when I found them the perfect book. For the quiet order of the Dewey Decimal System. For the sense of being useful. Now that was gone too. Derek stopped returning my calls entirely. I'd dial his number and it would go straight to voicemail. I left messages that went unanswered. I sent texts that showed as read but got no response. The worst part was the grandchildren. Emma was 7 and Thomas was 5. I'd seen them every Sunday for lunch, every Wednesday for park visits. I'd been teaching Emma to knit. Thomas and I had been working our way through the Magic Tree House books together. Now I couldn't see them at all. I drove past their house one afternoon, just to catch a glimpse of them playing in the backyard. Derek's car was in the driveway. I parked across the street, watching Thomas push Emma on their tire swing. My chest physically hurt. The front door opened and Derek stepped out. He saw my car. For a moment, we locked eyes across the distance. Then he pulled out his phone and made a call, his expression hard. 10 minutes later, a police car pulled up behind me. "Ma'am, you need to move along. You've been reported for suspicious activity. That's my son's house. Those are my grandchildren. Ma'am, there's a restraining order request being filed. I'm going to need you to leave this neighborhood and not return." A restraining order. Bridget was taking my grandchildren away legally now. I hired a lawyer the next day. Ronald Spence was in his late 60s, with a small practice in a converted house downtown. He charged reasonable rates because he was semi-retired, taking cases that interested him more than cases that paid well. He reviewed all the evidence the police had gathered, the text messages, the chat group screenshots, Patricia's testimony, the oleander in my garage shed, which police had found and tested, traces of it exactly matching what had poisoned Patricia. "Mrs. Brennan, I'll be honest with you. This looks bad. Someone planted that evidence. Someone faked those messages. Bridget had access to my garage 2 months ago during a family barbecue. She volunteered to help organize my gardening supplies. She must have taken samples of the oleander then." He made notes. "That's plausible, but proving it will be difficult. Can anyone verify she was alone in your garage?" I thought back to that sunny afternoon in July. Derek had been grilling. The kids had been playing in the sprinkler. I'd been in the kitchen making potato salad. Where had everyone else been? I don't know. Everyone was scattered around the yard. Ronald sighed. "What about your son's phone call? The one where he warned you about the cookies?" Derek was certain about it at first. He'd seen Bridget's Amazon orders, her laptop searches. But now he says he doesn't remember clearly. "Has your daughter-in-law been influencing him?" "Of course she has. She's been gaslighting him for days. But he's my son. He should know me well enough to see through her lies." Ronald's expression was sympathetic but not hopeful. "Mrs. Brennan, I'll do everything I can for you, but you need to prepare yourself for the possibility that this goes to trial. And if it does, with this evidence, a conviction is likely." I left his office feeling hollow. Patricia was recovering but suffering permanent kidney damage. Her medical bills were astronomical. I'd already received notice that she was filing a civil suit against me for medical expenses, pain and suffering, and long-term care costs. If I lost that civil suit, I'd lose my house. The modest 3-bedroom ranch where I'd raised Derek, where my late husband and I had built our life together, it was all I had left. That night, I couldn't sleep. I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, trying to understand how Bridget had done this. The fake text messages must have involved some kind of spoofing technology. The screenshots could be digitally created. But how had she planned it all so carefully? I got up and went to my home office, a converted spare bedroom filled with filing cabinets and boxes. My late husband's life insurance papers, Derek's school records, old tax returns. Somewhere in here, there had to be something that could help me. I started pulling boxes down from the closet shelf, sorting through years of accumulated documents, birth certificates, marriage license, mortgage papers. And then, in a box labeled insurance, I found something that made my blood run cold. It was a life insurance policy I didn't remember seeing before. A policy on my life, taken out by Derek 5 years ago. That wasn't unusual. Many adult children took out modest policies on their parents to cover funeral expenses. But this policy wasn't modest anymore. The original amount had been $25,000. Standard, reasonable. 3 months ago, it had been increased to $500,000. My hands trembled as I read through the paperwork. The signature on the increase form looked like Derek's, but I'd seen my son's handwriting for 38 years. I knew the way he crossed his T's, the loop of his Y's. This was close, but it wasn't quite right. And there, listed as secondary beneficiary, was Bridget's name. I sat on the floor of my office, surrounded by scattered papers, the full picture finally becoming clear. Bridget hadn't just decided one day to poison me. This had been planned for months, maybe years. She'd forged the insurance increase, setting up a massive payout for when I died. Then she'd carefully acquired oleander extract, researched dosages, and baked it into cookies that would kill me slowly enough to look like natural causes in an elderly woman. When I'd given those cookies to Patricia instead, Bridget's plan had fallen apart. The poison was traced. The attempt was exposed. So she'd pivoted brilliantly to plan B. Frame me for attempting to murder Patricia. Destroy my life. Make me lose everything. It was almost impressive in its calculated cruelty. I took photos of the insurance documents with my phone and drove to Ronald's office first thing the next morning. He reviewed them carefully, his expression growing more serious. "This is significant, Mrs. Brennan. This suggests premeditation and motive for your daughter-in-law to harm you. The forgery, if we can prove it's a forgery, shows criminal intent. But how do we prove it? I'm under investigation. I have no credibility. If I try to accuse Bridget of this, I'll look desperate and guilty. Let me send this to a handwriting expert. We need professional analysis. In the meantime, don't mention this to anyone. Not Derek. Not the police. Not yet." 2 weeks later, I was arrested. They came at 6 in the morning, knocking hard enough to rattle the front door. I opened it in my bathrobe to find Detective Morrison and 3 uniformed officers. "Clarissa Brennan, you're under arrest for attempted murder and assault with a deadly substance." He read me my rights while one of the officers handcuffed me. My neighbors were watching from their windows. Mrs. Patterson across the street had her phone out, filming. At the police station, I was processed like a criminal, fingerprinted, photographed, given an orange jumpsuit to wear. They took my wedding ring, my watch, even my reading glasses. Bail was set at $50,000. Ronald arrived at my arraignment, looking grim. "I can get you out, but it's going to take most of your savings and a chunk of your late husband's life insurance. Just do it. I can't stay in here." He made the arrangements. I was released that afternoon with an ankle monitor locked around my left leg and strict instructions for house arrest. I could only leave for medical appointments, court dates, and weekly check-ins with my probation officer. My house felt like a prison now. The rooms were the same, but everything had changed. I was trapped here, alone, while the legal system ground slowly toward my destruction. Derek visited once, 3 days after my arrest. He stood in my living room, hands in his pockets, looking anywhere but at my face. "Mom, I don't know what to think anymore. Think about who I am, who I've always been. You know me, Derek. You know I couldn't do this. I want to believe that. But Bridget showed me things. Messages you sent, things you said, and everything the police found. Those messages are fake. The evidence is planted. Derek, look at me. I'm your mother. I changed your diapers. I sat up with you through every fever. I taught you to ride a bike. Would I poison someone?" His eyes finally met mine, and I saw doubt there. Not certainty of my innocence. Doubt. "Bridget says you've always resented her. That you never thought she was good enough for me. That's a lie. Is it? Because I remember some comments you made over the years. Little things. About her job, her family, her choices." I thought back. Had I made comments? Yes. The normal observations any mother makes about her child's spouse. I think Bridget works too much, or the kids might benefit from more structure. Normal family dynamics. Nothing hateful. Nothing that would lead to this. Derek, Bridget is manipulating you. She's taken normal family interactions and twisted them into evidence of hatred. Can't you see that? He shook his head slowly. "I don't know what I see anymore, Mom. All I know is that Patricia almost died, and all the evidence points to you. What about your phone call? The one where you warned me about the cookies? You told me about Bridget's Amazon orders, her laptop searches." His face scrunched up in confusion. I remember being worried about something, but Bridget explained all that. The Amazon orders were for a gardening project. The searches were for a mystery novel she was reading. I overreacted. Or she's gaslighting you, making you doubt your own memories. That's a pretty serious accusation to make about my wife, Mom. Not as serious as her accusation that I tried to commit murder. We stood in silence for a long moment. Then Derek moved toward the door. I need to go. The kids are waiting in the car. The kids are here? Can I see them? Just for a minute? Bridget doesn't think that's a good idea. Given the restraining order and everything. Derek, please. They're my grandchildren. They're my children, Mom. And I have to protect them. He left. Through my front window, I watched him walk to his car where Emma and Thomas sat in the back seat. Emma saw me and waved. I waved back, tears streaming down my face, until Derek pulled away. That was the last time I saw my son for months. The civil lawsuit from Patricia moved forward rapidly. Her lawyer was aggressive, filing motions, demanding depositions, pushing for a quick trial. My medical malpractice insurance didn't cover criminal acts, so I was personally liable for everything. Ronald did his best, but the civil court operated on a different standard of proof than criminal court, preponderance of evidence rather than beyond reasonable doubt. We were going to lose. He told me this plainly during one of our meetings. How much will I lose? Your house. Almost certainly. Possibly your retirement accounts. Patricia's medical bills are over $300,000 and climbing. She'll need ongoing dialysis. The jury will be sympathetic to her. She's suing the wrong person. Bridget is the one who poisoned her. Then we need to prove that. The handwriting analysis came back on the insurance documents. The expert says the signature is likely forged, but he can't be 100% certain. It's good evidence, but not a smoking gun. I spent my days under house arrest reading through old family photos and emails, searching for any pattern that would explain Bridget's hatred. There were small moments that took on new significance now. The way she'd volunteered to organize my garage. How she'd borrowed my phone once, claiming hers was dead. Times she'd been alone in my house with access to my computer. She'd been planning this for so long. While searching through boxes of old documents in my basement, I found another anomaly. My late husband Jonathan had died 4 years ago of a sudden heart attack. He'd been 68, overweight, a prime candidate for cardiac problems. The death certificate listed acute myocardial infarction as cause of death. Natural causes. No autopsy. But now, looking at the dates, I realized Bridget had been researching ways to induce heart attacks around that same time. There were library records I'd never seen before, checked out on her card. Books about toxicology, about substances that could mimic natural deaths. Had Bridget killed my husband too? The thought made me physically ill, but I had no proof. Jonathan had been cremated. There was no way to test for poisons now. I mentioned this theory to Ronald. He listened carefully, then shook his head. Mrs. Brennan, even if true, we can't bring this up. It makes you sound paranoid and desperate. Right now, our best strategy is to focus on reasonable doubt in your case. Pointing fingers at your daughter-in-law for a 4-year-old death we can't prove will destroy your credibility. So I was trapped. Trapped in my house. Trapped by evidence I couldn't prove was false. Trapped by a daughter-in-law whose hatred ran so deep she'd spent years planning my destruction. The criminal trial was scheduled for 2 months away. Ronald warned me that, with the evidence and Patricia's testimony, I was likely to be convicted. Attempted murder carried 15 to 20 years in prison. I was 67 years old. A 20-year sentence was a life sentence. At night, I lay awake thinking about prison, about dying there, about never seeing Emma and Thomas grow up, about Derek believing forever that his mother was a monster. The ankle monitor blinked its steady red light, reminding me that I was already living in a cage. The trial began on a cold Monday morning in late October. I wore a navy blue suit that hung loosely on my frame. I'd lost 23 pounds since this nightmare began. Unable to eat, unable to sleep, unable to do anything but worry. The courtroom was packed. Local media had covered the story extensively. Elderly woman poisons her daughter-in-law's mother over family grudge. It had all the elements of a compelling story. Patricia sat in the front row, still using a wheelchair, though Ronald had quietly told me she could walk. The wheelchair was for sympathy. for the jury to see her as a victim. Her face looked drawn and aged, her skin waxy. The kidney damage was real, even if her mobility was exaggerated. Bridget sat beside her mother, dressed in somber black, tissues clutched in her hand. Derek sat on her other side, his face expressionless. The prosecutor, Amanda Winters, was in her early 40s with sharp features and sharper courtroom skills. She was known for winning difficult cases. In her opening statement, she painted me as a bitter, jealous woman who'd hidden her resentment behind a facade of kindness. Clarissa Brennan is a master manipulator, she told the jury. For years, she smiled at Patricia Dawson while secretly despising her. Why? Because Patricia had something Clarissa wanted: a close relationship with Clarissa's son and grandchildren. Clarissa saw Patricia as competition for Derek's love and attention. And when that resentment grew too strong to contain, Clarissa decided to eliminate her rival. She took cookies laced with deadly oleander poison and gave them to Patricia, knowing full well what would happen. Ronald's opening statement focused on reasonable doubt. He pointed out the suspicious circumstances, the convenient evidence, the possibility of someone else being responsible. But even to my own ears, it sounded weak. The prosecution called witness after witness, neighbors who'd heard me make offhand comments about Bridget over the years, innocent remarks twisted into evidence of deep hatred, church members who testified that I'd seemed tense whenever Patricia was around, shop owners who'd sold me gardening supplies, including the oleander plants in my backyard. Then Bridget took the stand. She was perfect, tears flowing at exactly the right moments, voice breaking with emotion but never becoming hysterical. She described our relationship as strained, claiming I'd made her feel unwelcome from the beginning of her marriage to Derek. She'd make little comments, Bridget said, dabbing at her eyes, about my cooking, my housekeeping, how I was raising the children. Nothing overtly cruel, but constant little criticisms that made me feel like I was never good enough. And how did this affect your mother's relationship with Mrs. Brennan? The prosecutor asked. Mom tried to smooth things over. She'd help Clarissa with her garden, trying to build bridges. She was always so kind, always trying to make peace. I think Clarissa resented that too. Resented that Mom was a better person than she was. I watched the jury. Several of them were nodding slightly. Tell us about the cookies you made, Amanda Winters prompted. Bridget took a shaky breath. I wanted to do something special for Clarissa's birthday. Despite everything, I wanted to show her I cared. I spent hours baking those cookies from scratch. I used my grandmother's recipe. I even wrote a heartfelt card, signing it from Derek, because I knew she'd appreciate that more than if they came from me. And what happened to those cookies? Clarissa gave them to my mother. She gave away a gift I'd made with love, gave it to the one person she wanted to hurt, and then she must have. She must have done something to them before she gave them away. Added something to make my mother sick. Objection, Ronald said wearily. Speculation. Sustained. The jury will disregard the witness's last statement. But the damage was done. The jury had heard it. Patricia's testimony was devastating. She described in detail how I'd given her the cookies, her voice quavering as she recalled my strange smile and insistent tone. She told me they were extra special, Patricia said. Made just for me. She said I should eat them right away while they were fresh. I thought she was being kind. I never imagined. She broke down crying. The judge called a recess. During the break, I sat with Ronald in a small conference room. This is going worse than I expected, he admitted. Bridget's testimony was very compelling, and Patricia's description of your demeanor when you gave her the cookies, the jury believes her, because she believes it herself now. Bridget has convinced her that's what happened. Patricia's confused and traumatized, and her daughter has been whispering in her ear for months. I know, but knowing that and proving it are different things. When Derek took the stand, my heart broke all over again. The prosecutor asked him about our relationship. He described me as a loving mother, which gave me a brief moment of hope. Then she asked about my relationship with Bridget. Mom and Bridget had their differences, Derek said carefully. Mom could be critical sometimes, She had opinions about how we should raise the kids, how Bridget should manage the house. Small things, but they added up. Did your mother ever express resentment toward Patricia Dawson? Derek hesitated. I could see him struggling. She made comments sometimes about how much time Patricia spent with us, about how the kids called Patricia's house Grandma Pat's house, like it was their second home. I think Mom felt left out. My lawyer did his best on cross-examination. Derek, did you ever see your mother behave cruelly toward Patricia Dawson? No. Did she ever threaten Patricia in any way? No. Did she ever show any signs of wanting to harm Patricia? No. But, thank you. No further questions. But the damage was done. My own son had suggested I was jealous and resentful. The forensics expert testified about the oleander found in my garage shed. It matched perfectly with the poison in Patricia's system. The chemical signature was identical. Could this oleander have been planted in Mrs. Brennan's shed by someone else? Ronald asked. It's possible, but unlikely. The samples showed degradation consistent with being stored for several weeks. They weren't freshly placed there. Couldn't someone have taken samples weeks earlier and stored them, then planted them? Objectively, yes. But that would require significant planning and forethought. Exactly, I thought. The kind of planning Bridget had done. When it was the defense's turn, Ronald called his handwriting expert. The man testified that the signature on the insurance increase form was likely forged, showing subtle differences in stroke pressure and letter formation. How certain are you that this is a forgery? Ronald asked. I'd say 75 to 80% certain. On cross-examination, the prosecutor pounced. So there's a 20 to 25% chance it's genuine? Technically, yes. And isn't it true that signatures can vary naturally depending on someone's physical state, the writing surface, the time of day? That's correct. So this could simply be Derek Brennan's signature on a day when he was tired or rushed? It's possible. The expert's testimony, meant to prove Bridget's malicious planning, had been defanged. Ronald called me to the stand on the 8th day of trial. I told my story simply and honestly. The cookies arriving, my decision to give them to Patricia, Derek's panicked phone call, finding Patricia collapsed. Why did you give away your birthday gift? Ronald asked. I'm not much of a sweets person. Patricia loves them, and she'd been so helpful with my garden. It seemed like a kind gesture. I never imagined there was anything wrong with them. Did you ever add anything to those cookies? Any substance at all? No, never. I gave Patricia the box exactly as I received it. Did you ever want to harm Patricia Dawson? No. She's my friend. I was terrified when I found her unconscious. I called 911. I tried to help her. Why would I do that if I'd poisoned her? Thank you. No further questions. Amanda Winters stood slowly, a predatory smile on her face. Mrs. Brennan, you claim you and Patricia are friends, but isn't it true that you resented her relationship with your son? No. You never made comments about how much time she spent with Derek's family? I may have mentioned it once or twice, but not resentfully. Just observing that they were close. You never felt replaced as grandmother? Patricia and I are both their grandmothers. There's room for both of us. Really? Then why do the children call her house Grandma Pat's house, but never mention Grandma Clarissa's house? The question stung because it was true. Emma and Thomas did say that. I don't know. That's just what they called it. Could it be because Patricia made them feel more welcome? Because she didn't criticize their mother constantly like you did? I never criticized Bridget constantly. But you did criticize her? I felt trapped. I had opinions sometimes. Like any mother-in-law. Opinions you expressed through text messages calling her a bad mother and mocking her weight? I never sent those messages. They're fake. The messages came from your phone number. Then someone spoofed my number or hacked my phone. I don't know how technology works well enough to explain it, but I know I didn't send them. She smiled. How convenient that you don't understand technology. It makes a perfect excuse, doesn't it? The cross-examination went on for 3 hours. By the end, I was exhausted, and I knew I'd performed badly. I'd sounded defensive, confused, exactly like someone making excuses. The jury deliberated for 2 days. When they came back, their faces told me everything I needed to know. But before the verdict could be read, something happened that changed everything. A young woman in the back of the courtroom stood up. She was maybe 25, wearing a courthouse employee ID badge. "Your Honor, I need to say something. It's important." The judge looked annoyed. "This is highly irregular. We're about to hear a verdict." "I know, and I'm sorry, but this can't wait. I have information about this case. Information that proves Mrs. Brennan might be innocent." The courtroom erupted in noise. The judge banged his gavel. "Order! Young woman!" approached the bench immediately. I watched as the courthouse clerk, her ID badge reading Amy Martinez, walked nervously down the aisle. Ronald leaned over to me. "Do you know her?" "No. I've never seen her before." The judge, prosecutor, and my lawyer had a heated discussion at the bench, too quiet for me to hear. After 10 minutes, the judge made his decision. The jury will be dismissed for deliberation, to continue tomorrow. Court is adjourned until 9 a.m. As the courtroom cleared, I was taken to a holding cell. Ronald came to see me an hour later, his expression a mixture of confusion and cautious hope. That clerk, Amy Martinez, claims she overheard a conversation in the courthouse parking lot 3 weeks ago. She says Bridget was meeting with a man, discussing splitting insurance money once this is done. She wants to give us information, but she's scared. Bridget's family apparently has some connections in the court system, and Amy's worried about retaliation. Why didn't she come forward before? She says she didn't piece it together until today, didn't realize the significance of what she'd heard, until she saw how the trial was going. That evening, back under house arrest in my living room, Ronald arrived with Amy. She was young and clearly nervous, twisting her hands as she sat on my couch. "Mrs. Brennan, I'm so sorry I didn't come forward sooner. I didn't understand what I'd heard. But I was working late one night, walking to my car, and I saw your daughter-in-law in the parking lot. She was with this man, talking urgently. I heard her say something about insurance money and starting fresh. She said, 'Once this is done, we split everything and both get what we want.' Did you see the man clearly?" "Not his face, but I got his license plate number. I write down plates of suspicious vehicles near the courthouse. It's a habit from my criminal justice classes." She handed Ronald a piece of paper with a plate number scrawled on it. He immediately made calls to his investigator contacts. "Amy, you mentioned Bridget has been coming to the courthouse often?" Ronald asked. "Yes. She told people she was preparing for the trial, but I saw her in the clerk's office where we keep old records. She was looking through files. I didn't think much of it at the time, because people do research, but now I'm wondering what she was looking for." "What kind of records?" "Death certificates, mostly. Old ones." My breath caught. Jonathan. She'd been researching Jonathan's death. Ronald's investigator called back within an hour. The license plate belonged to a man named Stuart Grimes. He had a criminal record. Fraud, identity theft, forgery. "This is your smoking gun," Ronald said, excitement clear in his voice. "If we can connect this Stuart Grimes to Bridget and prove they were conspiring, it changes everything." But finding Stuart and getting him to talk seemed impossible. And we had less than 12 hours before the jury returned. Ronald filed an emergency motion with the judge, requesting a 48-hour continuance to investigate this new evidence. The judge wasn't happy about it, but the potential for proof of a conspiracy was too significant to ignore. He granted the continuance over the prosecutor's vehement objections. Bridget, sitting in the gallery, had gone white when Amy gave her testimony in the judge's chambers. I saw fear flash across her face for the first time. Over the next day and a half, Ronald and his investigator worked frantically to build the connection between Bridget and Stuart. They pulled phone records, credit card statements, anything they could legally access, but it wasn't enough. Stuart was careful. Any communication between them had been done through burner phones or encrypted apps. Derek attended the emergency hearing where Amy's information was presented. I saw him in the hallway afterward, looking shaken. Mom, I don't know what to believe anymore. Believe the truth, Derek. That's all I've ever asked. But what is the truth? Everyone's lying about something. I'm not. I never have been. He looked at me for a long moment. Then he walked away without another word. That night, I couldn't sleep. The ankle monitor blinked its red light. The house creaked with settling sounds. I kept thinking about Stuart Grimes and how Bridget had orchestrated everything so carefully. At 2 a.m, I heard Derek's voice in my memory. Our phone call that morning after my birthday. His panic. His certainty that Bridget had done something wrong. Before she'd gotten to him with her manipulation and gaslighting. Derek knew. Deep down, he knew. The next morning, Ronald called me at 8. I need you to get ready. We're going back to court. Derek called me an hour ago. He looked through Bridget's phone last night. She keeps it locked usually, but he knows her passwords. He found text messages between her and Stuart Grimes. Messages about the oleander, about framing you, about the insurance money, about leaving Derek once they had the money and starting over together. I sat down hard on my couch. Derek saw all that. He's destroyed. His wife was planning to murder his mother, frame her for a different crime, collect insurance money, and abandon him and the kids. But he did the right thing. He brought me the phone. This is our evidence. In the courthouse 2 hours later, Derek looked like he'd aged 10 years overnight. His eyes were red-rimmed, his face pale. He avoided looking at Bridget, who sat in the gallery with dawning horror on her face. The judge reviewed the text messages in chambers. Even the prosecutor looked shocked by their contents. The messages were damning, detailed discussions of the oleander extraction process. Bridget's frustration when I gave the cookies to Patricia instead of eating them myself. Her decision to flip the script and frame me instead. References to the forged insurance documents. Plans for how she and Stuart would split the $500,000 and where they'd go to start their new lives. I have enough, the prosecutor said quietly. Your Honor, the state moves to dismiss all charges against Clarissa Brennan. Within an hour, I was free. The ankle monitor was removed. The charges were dropped. Police arrested Bridget and Stuart in the courtroom. Bridget screamed and cried, proclaiming her innocence even as officers handcuffed her. Stuart tried to run but was tackled by bailiffs. Patricia, wheeled into the courtroom to hear the developments, collapsed in her chair sobbing. When she understood that her own daughter had poisoned her, that Clarissa had been innocent all along, her wails of grief echoed through the courthouse. Derek stood alone in the hallway, staring at nothing. I approached him slowly. Derek. He turned to me, tears streaming down his face. Mom, I'm so sorry. I should have believed you. I should have known. She manipulated you. That's what manipulators do. I let her turn me against you. My own mother, the woman who raised me. Because of her lies, I abandoned you when you needed me most. How can you ever forgive me? I pulled him into a hug, feeling him shake with sobs against my shoulder. You're my son. There's nothing to forgive. You did the right thing in the end. That's what matters. We stood there in the courthouse hallway, holding each other, while the life Bridget had tried to destroy slowly began to rebuild itself. The weeks that followed were a blur of legal proceedings and personal reckonings. Bridget and Stuart were both charged with attempted murder against me, conspiracy, fraud, evidence tampering, and in Bridget's case, the attempted murder of her own mother. The evidence from Derek's phone was supplemented by additional discoveries. Police found the burner phones Bridget and Stuart had used, recovering months of deleted messages that detailed their entire plan. Stuart, facing decades in prison, accepted a plea deal in exchange for testimony against Bridget. He confirmed everything: how they'd met up again at a college reunion 2 years ago, how their affair had rekindled, how they'd plotted together to kill me and take the insurance money. Patricia withdrew her civil lawsuit against me with a tearful apology. We met for coffee 2 weeks after Bridget's arrest, both of us still processing the trauma. I can't believe my own daughter did this, Patricia said, her voice breaking. She poisoned me. She was willing to kill me to frame you. What kind of monster did I raise? You didn't raise a monster. You raised a daughter who made terrible choices. But Patricia, you're a victim too. She manipulated both of us. Patricia reached across the table and took my hand. Clarissa, I'm so sorry. The things I said in my testimony, the way I described you giving me those cookies. Bridget kept visiting me in the hospital, kept whispering things, making me doubt my own memories. I genuinely believed you'd done it. I know. I understand. How can you be so forgiving? Because holding on to anger would only hurt me. Bridget already took enough from both of us. I won't let her take my peace too. We cried together that afternoon. Two women who'd been pitted against each other by someone they'd both loved and trusted. Derek filed for divorce immediately. Given Bridget's crimes, there was no custody battle. He was granted full custody of Emma and Thomas. Bridget would have no contact with them, likely for many years given the prison sentence she was facing. The first time I saw the kids after everything was revealed, Emma ran to me and wrapped her arms around my waist. "Grandma, we missed you so much." Daddy said Mommy told lies about you. "We're sorry we couldn't visit." I knelt down to their level, hugging them both tightly. "You have nothing to be sorry for. You're just kids. This wasn't your fault." Thomas, my sweet 5-year-old, looked up at me with worried eyes. "Is Mommy going to jail?" "Yes, sweetheart. She did some very bad things, and she has to face consequences for them. We still love her," Emma said quietly. "Is that okay?" "Of course it is. She's your mother. You can love her and still understand that what she did was wrong." Derek moved into a house just 2 streets away from mine. He said he wanted to be close, wanted to rebuild our relationship, wanted the kids to see me regularly. We had dinner together 3 times a week. Slowly, painfully, we healed. My community gradually welcomed me back. Some people apologized sincerely. Helen came to my door with a casserole and tears in her eyes, begging my forgiveness for abandoning me. I gave it freely, though our friendship would never quite be the same. Some wounds leave scars. Others in town avoided eye contact, embarrassed by how quickly they'd believed the worst of me. I learned to be gracious about it, though it stung to realize how fragile my reputation had been. The library offered me my job back with an apology and compensation for the weeks I'd missed. I accepted, returning to my shelves and my children's reading program. The kids welcomed me back with handmade cards and enthusiastic hugs. My church held a special service, acknowledging the injustice I'd endured. The pastor preached about false witness and the importance of withholding judgment. I sat in my usual pew, 3rd row on the right, with Derek and the kids beside me. It felt like coming home. 6 months after my exoneration, Bridget's trial concluded. She was convicted on all counts. The judge sentenced her to 25 years in prison. She'd be almost 60 when she was released. In the courtroom, as the sentence was read, Bridget finally looked at me. There was no remorse in her eyes, only cold hatred. Even now, facing decades behind bars, she couldn't admit what she'd done was wrong. Some people are too broken to be fixed. Patricia and I became unlikely friends. We met for coffee every Tuesday morning, talking about gardening, books, grandchildren, and slowly processing our shared trauma. She was seeing a therapist to work through her daughter's betrayal. I was too. We recommended therapists to each other, compared notes on healing strategies, and supported each other through the hard days. "I never thought I'd be friends with my daughter's ex-mother-in-law," Patricia said one Tuesday, smiling sadly. "Life takes strange turns," I agreed. I started a support group for people who'd been falsely accused of crimes. It met at the library on Thursday evenings. We shared our stories, our strategies for rebuilding, our struggles with forgiveness and anger. Some people found it helpful. Others just needed to know they weren't alone. I understood that need deeply. Derek and I grew closer than we'd been in years. The crisis had stripped away all pretense, all the little tensions that accumulate in any parent-child relationship. We'd been forced to confront what really mattered: love, trust, and family. He told me often how sorry he was for doubting me. I told him just as often that I understood, that I'd forgiven him, that I was proud of him for ultimately choosing truth over comfort. You saved my life, I told him one Sunday afternoon. We were watching Emma and Thomas play in my backyard, their laughter floating through the spring air. You're my mom, he said simply. There was never really a choice. Emma came running up, her knees grass-stained, her hair escaping its ponytail. Grandma, can we make cookies? Real ones, not poison ones. The request would have been devastating a few months earlier. Now, I just laughed. Kids have a way of cutting through trauma with innocent honesty. Sure, sweetheart. Let's make chocolate chip. Your grandfather's recipe. In my kitchen, surrounded by flour clouds and chocolate chips and the sound of my grandchildren's giggles, I felt something I hadn't felt in months. Peace. Real. Genuine peace. I'd learned that truth has a way of emerging, no matter how deeply it's buried under lies. I'd learned that real love, the kind between a mother and son, can survive even the most sophisticated manipulation when both people choose honesty. I'd learned that giving people grace doesn't mean accepting abuse, and that fighting for your innocence isn't the same as being bitter or vengeful. Most of all, I'd learned that a simple act of kindness, me giving away cookies to someone who loved sweets, had revealed the deepest darkness in someone I'd trusted. But it had also led to the most profound healing. Patricia and I now shared something nobody would choose but many needed: the understanding of being betrayed by someone we'd trusted completely. In that shared pain, we'd found genuine friendship. She helped me replant my garden, choosing flowers that bloomed in every season. I helped her navigate her grief and guilt over Bridget's actions. You know what's strange? She said to me one afternoon as we planted daffodil bulbs. I'm grateful, in a weird way. Not for what happened, but for what came after. I found out who my real friends are. I learned I'm stronger than I thought. And I gained you. I understood exactly what she meant. My house, which had felt like a prison during those months of house arrest, became a home again. Emma's art projects covered my refrigerator. Thomas's toy cars lined my hallway. Derek's coffee mug sat in my cabinet, waiting for his next visit. The guest room that had sat empty for months was now set up for the kids' sleepovers. The spray-painted ghost of Poisoner on my garage door had been covered with a mural that Emma and Thomas helped me paint. Bright flowers and butterflies, symbols of transformation and new beginnings. On my 68th birthday, 1 year after the cookies had arrived and nearly destroyed my life, my family gathered in my backyard. Derek grilled hamburgers. Patricia brought potato salad. Emma and Thomas presented me with a card they'd made, covered in glitter and handprints and declarations of love. Helen came, tentatively, testing whether our friendship could fully heal. Other neighbors appeared, some I'd forgiven, some still earning their way back into my good graces. No one brought cookies. We laughed about that. Dark humor is sometimes the only way to process dark experiences. As the sun set and the fireflies began their evening dance, I looked around at the people gathered in my yard. My son, my grandchildren, my unlikely friend Patricia, my slowly rebuilding community. All of them there because truth had won, because justice, though delayed, had come, because love, real love, was stronger than lies. Derek raised his glass in a toast. To Mom, the strongest woman I know. Everyone echoed the sentiment. I felt tears prick my eyes, but they were good tears. Healing tears. I want to say something, I announced. Everyone quieted, turning to listen. This past year has been the hardest of my life. I lost everything. My freedom, my reputation, my family, my sense of safety. But I also gained something. I gained clarity about what really matters. I gained real friendship with Patricia. I gained a deeper relationship with Derek. I learned that I'm stronger than I ever knew. And I learned that choosing forgiveness doesn't make you weak. It makes you free. I paused, looking at each face. Bridget tried to destroy me. She came very close to succeeding. But she failed. Not because I fought back with hatred or revenge, but because I refused to let her poison take root in my heart the way it did in those cookies. The real poison isn't oleander. It's bitterness, unforgiveness, and the choice to let trauma define you. Patricia was crying openly now. Derek put his arm around my shoulders. So I want to thank all of you, I continued. Thank you for being here. Thank you for believing in truth. Thank you for giving grace when I needed it, and space when I needed that too. Thank you for being my family, my friends, my community. You are the antidote to everything Bridget tried to do. As darkness fell and the party continued, I sat in my garden chair watching fireflies dance between the roses Jonathan had planted years ago. I thought about how close I'd come to losing everything, how justice had hung by the thread of Derek's decision to look at that phone, how easily truth could have been buried forever under Bridget's carefully constructed lies. But it hadn't been buried. Truth had emerged, the way it always does eventually, if you're patient and strong enough to wait for it. And now, sitting in my garden surrounded by love and laughter and second chances, I understood something profound. The cookies that almost destroyed my life had actually saved it. They'd revealed hidden poison, both literal and figurative. They'd forced truths into the light. They'd stripped away pretense and shown what really mattered. Sometimes the worst things that happen to us become doorways to the best things. Not because the bad things were good, but because of how we choose to walk through those doorways. I chose forgiveness. I chose healing. I chose peace. And that choice made all the difference. Now I have a question for you. Have you ever been falsely accused of something you didn't do? Have you experienced betrayal from someone you trusted deeply? How did you find the strength to forgive and move forward? I'd love to hear your stories in the comments below. Your experiences might help someone else who's struggling with similar pain. If this story resonated with you, please give it a like. Subscribe to hear more stories about overcoming injustice and finding healing. And share this with someone who might need to hear that truth and justice can prevail, even when everything seems darkest. Thank you for listening to my story. Remember, no matter how deep the darkness, no matter how convincing the lies, truth has a way of rising to the surface. Hold on to that hope. Hold on to your integrity. Hold on to the people who truly love you. And most importantly, hold on to peace. May you find strength in your struggles, grace in your pain, and unexpected friendship in the aftermath of betrayal. Thank you, and may your days ahead be filled with truth, justice, and genuine love.